So the other day, a viewer told me that whenever I upload a new video, they immediately go to my comment section before actually watching the video. I was curious why they do this, so I asked them why, and they said the reason was because of how calmly I respond in comparison to the aggressive comments that some people leave after disagreeing with something I said in one of my videos. If I had to summarize my usual rebuttal to these types of disparaging comments, it would be the phrase, "not a counter argument." Now, one might question why I'd even bother giving these trolls any time of day, but let's consider the reason why I started making these types of videos in the first place. The fact is, there are a lot of people in today's society that haven't been taught proper communication skills, let alone critical thinking. Combine that with collectivism and we have a nasty situation of people parroting arguments that they heard somewhere through the grapevine. And never mind if the argument is actually valid. The issue here is people are taking the word of another person without verifying that argument's credibility, thus giving these people the placebo effect of being knowledgeable when in reality, they might not even know what the hell they're talking about. This is a huge criticism that I have for people that repeat things they hear from mainstream news. Most people who are paying attention already know that a lot of these outlets are giant propaganda machines. So if you're not verifying sources and really digging into a story beyond what the anchor tells you, what's to say you're not helping them spread propaganda? It's almost like the folks who attempt to insult me by referring to me as an Uncle Tom, but what they don't realize is that by calling me that, it instantly proves to me that they heard that insult from someone else. Because if they actually read the story of Uncle Tom's Cabin, then they would know that he was the good guy, which ironically turns their insult into a compliment. To make it worse, these types of folks end up getting comfortable with the delusion of having a good argument because they've never been challenged on the positions that they hold. The reason that I choose to challenge these folks is to prove to them, as well as those watching from the sidelines, that the habit of pretending to be knowledgeable about something doesn't fly with me and it shouldn't fly with anyone else. Society has normalized this idea of taking someone's word instead of challenging them on it. This creates what some would call a confirmation bias, which is the tendency to only look at information that supports one's preconceptions while rejecting or ignoring any information that would challenge their beliefs. Whether it's a politician, a celebrity, or a blue checkmark on Twitter, most people are way too comfortable letting strangers think for them, and it's something that I'm worried about even with this channel. I can appreciate that a lot of people see me as, the oracle of truth, but if you're not following it up by doing your own research, you and I are no different from those who blindly follow the word of CNN. Let's consider a scenario for a second. Let's say a teacher catches one of their students cheating on a test, right? And they call on that student's name so that the rest of the class is aware that that behavior is unacceptable. So when I challenge someone in the comments by asking them to elaborate on something, it's setting the expectation to the rest of the viewers that you just can't jump to a conclusion without formulating a rational, logical argument to support that conclusion. So for today's video, I'm going to go over the most common tactics that my critics use to make their points so that you can easily spot the difference between the fakers and those who are truly knowledgeable. This will hopefully help you freshen up your comebacks when dealing with people like this, so you also don't waste your time arguing with the wall. Alright, so the first tactic that's commonly used in place of a legitimate counter-argument are the use of insults, or otherwise known as ad hominem attacks, like this comment right here. First of all, I try to find the silver lining with these types of interactions because at the end of the day, they're still boosting up my video in the algorithm by commenting this nonsense. But more importantly, comments like this are a telltale sign that this person probably never took conflict resolution classes or isn't normally exposed to differing opinions. So instead of actually hearing my argument and providing a counter argument, they go straight for the insults. Unfortunately for them, these comments mean nothing. Yeah, it might make them feel good for a brief moment, but after that jolt of dopamine, guess what? Surprise! You're still ignorant. The way that I see it is if you're incapable of proving your point without personally attacking someone's character, then your argument wasn't good enough to begin with. Honestly, it happens so often that it's gotten to a point where if someone were to leave me 5 paragraphs but decide to insult me at the very end, my eyes automatically divert to the insult and I ignore the rest of their comment. Literally, my eyes glaze over. And because I'm serious about setting the expectation that baseless claims don't work on my channel, I'll let them know in the comments, come back when you have a real argument. You know that stereotype with men in fancy cars? This idea that if a man has a souped up ride, he's clearly overcompensating for something? Now, I don't necessarily believe that's entirely true. However, when I encounter someone that can't defend their position without insulting me, I equate it to the same thing. You're trying to overcompensate because you're not entirely confident with your argument, because if you were, your argument would speak for itself, would it not? Next up is the deflection tactic. It's when someone tries to discredit your argument, but when asked to elaborate, they magically have something more important to do. Kind of like this comment right here. It starts off with an insult, and then when I asked this person to provide me with a counter argument, they insisted that I wasn't worthy of hearing one. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Or this comment right here, where after I called someone out on their bluff, they turned down an opportunity to challenge me despite them showing interest in doing so only a few moments prior. The next tactic that I see a lot is what I like to refer to as the babysitter, and you'll understand why in a minute. This usually occurs when someone accuses me of having a bad argument, but when I follow up by asking them to counter my argument, they instead tag a bunch of random people unrelated to our conversation so they can debate me instead of the person I'm currently interacting with. Thus why I call this tactic the babysitter. I tend to get these types of comments more so on Twitter because my critics can easily signal to their babysitters that they need some assistance winning an argument. The next tactic that I see a lot of is what I call the yelling at the wall technique. Pretty much, it's the act of another person providing a rebuttal to your argument without you actually being present, let alone even knowing that they gave you a counter argument in the first place. I see this a lot with political YouTubers who, unbeknown to me, have made video responses in opposition to my arguments. Now, I normally wouldn't have an issue with this if they actually provided a rational response, but let's be real here. If someone knows they can win a fight if the other person can't defend themselves, they might be more inclined to play dirty like this guy right here.
This is my favorite bitch baby talking point from conservatives. I think it's so funny when they call me a racist and then they complain about social division. Like, okay. Very nice. I'll call you a white supremacist to your face. I don't even know enough about your positions. I'll just guess that you're a white supremacist and then I'll substantiate it later. I'll post hoc justify my assessment of your character. And I'll be right too. It's not hard to tell with you people.
Sorry, what was that?
I'll call you a white supremacist.
Sorry. One more time?
I'll call you a white supremacist.
One more time.
I'll call you a white supremacist.
It sounded like you were about to ask for a debate, but it looks like there might have been a glitch in the matrix. You know, aside from a white man suggesting that a black woman is a white supremacist only for you to substantiate that baseless claim later, yes. How logical of you. By the way, let's think about this for a second. Actions speak louder than words, meaning you can listen to what people say, but you should really pay attention to what they do. And the fact that it's easier or more comfortable for some people to be vitriolic than it is to invite that same person to a debate says a lot about where the bulk of their expertise lies. And this brings me to my next tactic, which I like to call word vomit. It's the act of saying a bunch of fancy words that might not even be relevant to the conversation. The idea is to confuse you enough so that you redirect your attention somewhere else. An example of this would be the typical responses I get when people try to challenge my rejection of Black Lives Matter. They'll type out an 8-page history lesson on slavery or Jim Crow, but this information is completely irrelevant to my argument that BLM hasn't followed through with most, if not all, of their promises. I don't need a history lesson to detect bullshit. Verbally, this happens in the same way, where someone will respond with a long, strung out rebuttal, giving your mind enough time to wander before it totally forgets what the original question was. But thankfully for me, I usually have a notebook so I can jot down all of their points and circle back to them so they can elaborate on it later. Can't get me. Last but not least, we can't forget about some good old projection. This is probably my favorite one. Not really, it's annoying, but I get it a lot, which is the act of projecting your impulses, behavior, or feelings onto someone else. For example, let's look at this recent comment. Oh, Lord. Okay. Oh, all right, let's read this. Just got recommended your channel. Hard fucking pass. I'll never understand why people need to announce that they don't like something. How difficult is it for you to leave the page and move on with your life? I'm being serious. I'm not trying to be combative. I'm just like, is it that hard? Okay. Next they say, I can see that you're most likely pandering to insecure white racist. Okay, so since we've already established that black people are not a monolith and don't all share the same views, claiming that I'm pandering to insecure white racists despite having a very diverse viewership is a feeling and not a fact-based argument. Continuing on, how long and how many 10-letter words and speed talking does it take to not make a point, but instead try to shoot down or muddy the waters on something else? Okay, so this sarcastic tirade was an attempt to discredit my argument rather than providing an argument of their own. So unfortunately, this part is useless to me as well. The comment later ends by saying, denying race issues is some coward shit, but there's another word for a black person doing it for the false and temporary admiration of whites. Oh, here we go again. All right, back to the insults, I see. So this person is assuming that I make these videos for the acceptance of white people. But the irony is, I'm someone that never strives to be accepted or liked by strangers, because if I did, I wouldn't have black activists up my ass all the time for not wanting to join their groupthink. If you don't like me, you don't like me. Why should I care? But not only that, this comment suggests that white acceptance is a top priority. So this would be one of those instances where I think to myself, are you sure you're not the one striving for white admiration and you're only projecting your own desires? Again, this is a feeling, not a fact. And this concludes the most common debate tactics that people use in place of legitimate arguments. If I could leave you with one final bit of advice, it would be to keep it simple. All right, make your claim, ask your question, and allow them an opportunity to respond. Don't overwhelm them with a bunch of things you want to talk about, because just like I learned in customer service, when you email a customer a long page, they might not even read everything. They're going to pick what they want and only address the sections that they like. So just keep it simple and watch them lose their mind. Challenging people on what they believe is no easy task, and I can understand the hesitancy to do so when someone already believes that they're right. But if we collectively make a habit out of engaging with these types of arguments, we can help create a new meta for debate. If people know they're going to be challenged anytime they make a baseless claim, it might annoy them enough to the point that they stop doing it, which is what we want. We need to set the expectation that if you want to be a part of the discussion, critical thinking, fact-based arguments, and most importantly, listening are requirements for healthy, productive discourse. And if you just so happen to be someone that's made a habit out of arguing in this manner, I want to go on record and say, you're full of shit. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content like this. My name is Gothix and I will see you in the comments section. Bye.